All right, so the recording is now on. Welcome, everyone. So, really glad to see everyone here today. Just to confirm, this is our How and Why to Make a 5-Year Plan workshop. My name is Ashley Erickson, and I'm an engineering instructor here at DVC. And so I'm hoping to share with you my own personal experiences, as well as a lot of good information about 5-year plans. So please take a moment if you have not already done so, and feel free to download the presentation slides as well as the 5-year plan template. During this workshop, we will go through that template and we will guide you through the process of creating your own 5-year plan. And please note, as I've mentioned here on the slide, it may take longer than 1 hour for you to fully complete this plan. And so please do not panic if it takes more than an hour for you to go through this. That's perfectly normal. Just please be aware that it's definitely time well spent to go through and prepare the plan. And our goal for today is to provide you enough information to help you get started on that 5-year plan. All right, and one last logistical thing before we dive in, feel free to shout out or type in the chat if you have questions as we go through this material. And I just ask that you keep yourself muted if you're not asking a question to avoid any background noise. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and get started. And so once again, if you haven't already, please double check our Zoom chat for the download links for today's slides and our template. Okay, so welcome everyone. Once again, my name is Ashley Erickson, and I teach in the engineering department here at DVC. And our goals for today's workshop are to really help you know how and why to make a 5-year plan, and to learn how to set goals for yourself and break them down into doable step-by-step milestones. And also, as you can see, I've provided everyone a template which you can fill out to help you create your very own 5-year plan. And at the end of the presentation, I've also included some additional tips and things to consider in order to help you set effective and meaningful goals. And once again, as we go through this material, feel free to shout out or type in the chat if you have questions as we go through. All right, so let's go ahead and dive in. So first, a little bit about me. So I actually spent most of my life in the Bay Area. I'm a Bay Area native. Outside of class, I'm a foodie and fan of all things nerdy. My background is actually in chemical engineering, and over the course of my career, I did a wide range of roles in biosensors, optics, process engineering, manufacturing, and hardware. And I spent about 6 years in industry, another 4 years in research and academia. So I'm, of course, happy to tell you all about that. And you can see here is my smiling face on my very first day at work as an engineer after I graduated. And so if we take a closer look at this picture, this is always a fun way to start the workshop. You can see here are the things that were running through my mind when that picture was taken. First, I was in Arizona in July, and this was like 2 p.m. And you can see it was triple digits out. It was very warm. The other thing that was going through my mind was a little bit of fear. Here I was with a PhD in chemical engineering, and yet I wasn't automatically happy and successful. I was on the edge of starting a new career and, jumping into the real world, and it was scary. And so I started to wonder, well, how do I set myself up for success, both at work and in real life? Nobody really teaches you about goal setting and career planning in school, right? And nobody's going to do it for you. And so I kind of had to figure this stuff out on my own. But I'm really happy everyone is here today at this workshop because I can share with you many of the things I wish I had known when I was in this position. So let's go ahead and jump into 5-year plans. One of the most important tools that many career coaches and professionals recommend is making a 5-year plan. And the idea is that you plan out your next 5 years to help set yourself up for success. And a big reason for this is because, most people don't take the time to plan. They struggle to achieve their goals because they either don't know what they want or they just don't have a plan to make it happen. And yet we know from research that you're 42% more likely to achieve a goal if you write it down. So the idea with a 5-year plan is that you start thinking about what are the goals that I want to achieve over the next 5 years. And that way it can help guide you as you go about your day-to-day decisions and planning for your future. And so one of the first things I started doing when I entered industry was I made that 5-year plan. And I figured out, where do I want to be 5 years from now? So once again, why do we bother to do this? So once again, 5-year plan, it's our collection of goals for the next 5 years. And career coaches and professionals swear by these things. For our workshop, I've prepared a template for you on this website. So I'll put the link in again. It's just a Google document. So for those of you who just joined, please take a moment and download that 5-year plan template. And so for the first part of our workshop, we'll help everybody go through this 3-part plan and fill in their goals and ideas. And then we'll also talk about how to break those goals down into manageable, achievable chunks. And once again, most people are probably not going to be able to complete this template in 1 hour for our workshop. Most people tend to take a little longer. So please don't feel like you have to finish your entire 5-year plan today, but use this information to help you get started. And if you have any questions as we go through this plan, feel free to shout out or type in the chat, and we'll get those questions answered. All right, so are there any other questions from the group so far before we move on to part 1 of our template? All right, let's go ahead and proceed to part 1 of our 5-year plan template. And so if you've downloaded that template, please go ahead and pull up the part 1 and follow along as we discuss it. I'm putting the link in the chat one last time in case anybody missed it. Okay, so here's part 1 of our 5-year plan template. And in the first part, you're not actually going to set any goals just yet. Instead, the idea is for you to look at how far you've come and where you want to go next. This template was derived partially from some books, including Awaken the Giant Within by Tony Robbins. And they talk about how it's important to look at not just where you are now, but how far you've come. Because I think many of us will see that we have improved over the past 5 years. So the idea of this first part is you look at these categories in this table. We have education, career, family relationships, fun and adventure, and health. And the idea here is for each of these rows, you give yourself a score from 0 to 10, with 10 being best. So 10 means perfect, you won't change a thing. 0 means the worst, that you want to change everything. And the idea is you give yourself a score 5 years ago, today, and the score you want in 5 years. For example, let's look at education. Suppose 5 years ago you were still in high school. So maybe as far as education goes, maybe you give yourself a 5. You feel like, okay, I've learned a little bit, but there's still a lot more to go. Maybe today you are enrolled at DVC, you've taken some courses already, or you've just started out. And so you feel like maybe you're a 6 or a 7. So you've improved since the past 5 years, but maybe there's still a little further you want to go. And then finally, you look ahead to 5 years from now and think, where would I want my education to be? Do I still want to get another degree or learn some new skills? Or am I perfectly happy where I'm at? For some of these items, you might not have that different of a score in 5 years. But for other items, you might want the number to still be higher. For example, with education, maybe you'd like to have an 8 or a 9. And then in this last column, you can write comments about what you want to do or how you want to improve that particular rating. For example, for education, maybe you say, I want to complete my AS degree and transfer to a 4-year school for a BS in engineering. This is just an example. So again, your goals could be very different. But the purpose of this is to give you an opportunity to reflect on where you've been, where you are now, and where you'd like to improve. And the point is not to beat yourself up if you don't have a 10 in every category, but instead to just help you identify which are the areas you want to focus on the most. So let's give everybody a couple minutes to fill out this first part of our 5-year plan template. For those who just joined, please click on the link in the chat to download the template. Are there any questions I can answer about part 1 as everybody is starting to fill it out? All right, so let's just pause for about 2 minutes. We'll just let everybody take a first pass at filling out those numbers in the table. You don't have to have everything perfectly complete during this workshop, but use this time to get started and think about where you would like to improve in each of these categories. And once again, if you do have questions as we go through this, you're welcome to shout out or type in the chat, and we'll do our best to answer those. All right, how's everybody doing? People need another minute, or have any questions on this? Please give me a thumbs up if you'd like to continue on, or if you need a little more time, please let me know in the chat. Again, you don't have to finish everything. All right, looks like some people are saying another minute. Let's take another minute, let everybody finish up. And once again, you do not have to have everything completely done. The goal is to get you started. And if you need more time after the workshop, you can absolutely go back and fill in more details. All right, any other questions from the group before we move on to part 2? All right, so let's go ahead and move on to part 2. I did have one question about those who are here for extra credit. So if you are here for extra credit, please do make sure you stay for the whole Zoom meeting. And after this workshop is ended, then the facilitator will be able to reach out to your instructors and confirm you were here for extra credit. Okay, let's go ahead and continue then. So the goal here again in part 1 is to help you think about where you would like to focus on your 5-year plan and your goals. Okay, so next, let's go ahead and move on to part 2. And so in part 2 of our 5-year plan, we want to start converting our ideas from part 1 into actual goals. And here we want to try to be strategic about how we write our goals. For example, it's very easy to write a goal like, I want to eat healthier, right? Like, that's a very good goal, right? Like, I think many of us can probably do a better job of that. Definitely I can. But this is not a SMART goal. So when we say, I want to eat healthier, what does that mean? Does that mean you're getting rid of anything sweet? Does that mean you're eating only vegetables? What does healthier mean? And how do we know when we're successful? To write better goals, we instead choose to follow SMART goals. And you can see on this slide that SMART is actually an acronym. SMART stands for specific, measurable, achievable, relevant, and time-bound. So SMART goals are specific in that you know exactly what you're doing. They're measurable in that you can immediately measure your progress against that goal. There's a specific number or target you're trying to reach. Next is achievable. You want to make sure that you're choosing goals that are actually possible to accomplish. You don't want to bite off more than you can chew. And ideally, it's better at the end of the day to set smaller achievable goals rather than giant, overly ambitious goals. Relevant is also important. If you're needing to have a special diet for like medical reasons or something, and you have dietary restrictions, then maybe you want to make sure that goal is appropriate for what you're trying to do. And finally, time bound. The goal should have a specific date or time frame so you know whether you have achieved it or not and when you're going to get it done. So here's an example of a SMART goal. Instead of saying, I want to eat healthier, you could say, I will eat at least 2 servings of fresh vegetables every day for the next year. That is a specific goal. It's definitely measurable. It's probably achievable if I don't get lazy. It's relevant, and it's definitely time-bound. So the trick with writing your 5-year plan is to use SMART goals as much as possible. Is if you write SMART goals, you're more likely to be able to achieve them and measure your progress. Are there any questions about SMART goals? All right, then, let's go ahead then and look at a couple more examples. So, an okay goal might be, I want to manage my time. A better SMART goal would be, every Sunday evening, I will spend 20 minutes making a plan for next week and schedule time to complete all my tasks. Or I want to get more exercise becomes, every morning I will spend 30 minutes walking, running, or lifting weights. Next one, I want to improve my grades. There's many ways you could do that, but one potential SMART goal could be that you'll spend 30 minutes every day after lecture reviewing the material and asking any questions you have. Or instead of I want to get a degree in engineering, you could write, within the next 5 years, I will complete a BS in mechanical engineering and maintain a minimum GPA. Notice how the SMART goals really make your goals a lot more specific, and it's a lot easier to track your progress. This is what we are looking for when you write your 5-year plan. And so you can see in part 2 of your plan, your goal is to start writing different SMART goals in the left column. And then in the right columns for milestones, you can fill in the milestones for the 1-year, 3-year, and 5-year milestones. So just a reminder here, milestones are basically deliverables or checkpoints that help you confirm whether you're on track to meet your goal. So for example, if you wanted to do that degree in mechanical engineering, maybe a 1-year milestone could be that you've met with your DVC advisor. And then, maybe 3-year milestone would be that you have transferred or you're in the process of transferring to that engineering school. All right, any questions on part 2 of our 5-year plan? All right, I see thumbs up. So let's give everybody a few minutes to write some goals for part 2. And so once again, if you look on your template, you'll see that there are some columns and rows for each different category of goals. So I recommend for the next few minutes, pick a row or two, for example, education or career, and think about what kind of SMART goal you could write for those different categories. And if anybody wants to share a goal or if anybody needs help creating one, I'm also very happy to provide some feedback as well. So everybody, please take a couple minutes and get started on writing these part 2 goals. This can actually be a pretty time-consuming process, so you certainly don't have to write out all your goals now, but as much as you can, make them SMART goals. The more time you spend thinking about really effective goals and writing them down, the more likely you are to actually complete those goals and prepare plans to help you achieve them. All right, so everybody, please take a few minutes. Start writing down some goals for part 2 of your template. And if you have any questions, feel free to shout out or type in the chat so we can get those answered. Let's see, there's a question in the chat here. Just pull it up. Let's see. So there's a question. If I have a 3-year goal to get an associate's degree in industrial design, what would be my 1-year goal? That's a great question. And so a good place where you might want to start is a 1-year goal could be making sure that you have met with an academic advisor at DVC, and you can have an academic advisor help you create a plan to complete that degree. And so often the advisors can help you figure out which courses to take in which semester. And so your 1-year goal could also be to verify that you are on track per the plan that you have prepared with your academic advisor, and maybe that you have maintained a target GPA. So often the 1-year goal might be something smaller, like, a milestone like that, rather than a full, finishing a degree. Does that answer the question?
It does.
All right, great.
It does. Thanks.
All right. Any other questions I can help with? All right, let's give everyone maybe another 1 to 2 minutes to just finish up whichever goal you're currently working on, and then we'll move on to part 3. All right, any last questions before we move on to the next part? Right, so once again, you don't have to finish all of part 2 during today's workshop, but if you haven't finished, I highly recommend that you take the time at some point soon to finish up the rest of the part 2. Time spent preparing these SMART goals will be incredibly helpful. And any goals that you set and work toward, you'll be very happy 5 years from now if you're able to look back and see that you did a little bit of progress each day and were able to achieve that goal. So definitely make sure you take the time to finish this plan if you are unable to do so during the workshop. Okay, so let's go ahead and move on to part 3 of our 5-year plan template. Part 3 is all about taking action. So in part 2, you came up with some very nice SMART goals. But typically, goals are not something we can accomplish overnight, right? Like, typically, goals require a lot of work and every day making a little bit of progress or making careful decisions and planning carefully so that you can achieve that goal. So in part 3, what you want to do is think about what can you do right now, every day, every week, and every month to help you make progress toward those goals. So let's talk through an example. We had a great question earlier from someone who was interested in industrial design. So let's suppose that we wanted to get that associate's degree in industrial design. It's an excellent goal. What could we do right now to help reach that goal? Maybe you haven't met with an advisor just yet at DVC. Maybe you make that appointment with your DVC advisor. And you make sure that you schedule that appointment and you figure out your plan in order to complete that degree. Or maybe you've already made an appointment, but you need to follow up or you need to figure out which courses you want to take. So, what could you do right now to help reach that goal? Next, we have what can you do every day to help reach your goals? There might be a lot of things that you can think of. And the goal here is not to overwhelm yourself writing down too many goals, but instead to think about what could you do every single day to help you make progress toward that goal. For example, maybe you need to make sure that all your homework and assignments are completed on time. Or maybe you want to set a to-do list and make sure that all your critical items are checked off. That could also be a good goal to do every week. Maybe every week you prepare a weekly plan so that you can more effectively manage time and all the tasks that you need to complete. And then finally, last one, what could you do every month to help reach your goals? So this one's a little harder because every month is less frequent. But maybe there's a certain part of industrial design or a certain part of your degree path that is particularly interesting. Maybe you could do a job search on Indeed.com and seek out new opportunities. Or maybe there's a certain thing that you really want to design and you spend 1 hour researching or working on a project of interest. Or maybe you have a goal where you want to learn some new skills. Maybe you want to do industrial design, but you're not quite as skilled at CAD and drafting software as you'd like. Maybe you spend a few hours every month working on some online courses. So the idea here is not to necessarily write down every single thing, but think about small actions you can do on a regular basis to help you achieve that goal. That's what you want to do here. Any questions on what we're doing in part 3? All right, so here's another example just to give people some things to think about. This is an example for the education. If you wanted to do an engineering degree, for example. And notice that a lot of these milestone goals are pretty specific. Book an appointment with an advisor, identify friends, family members, or mentors you can meet with, search for jobs online and list the skills and topics you want to learn so that you can land your dream job. Maybe you like to do journaling, you spend some time writing in your journal. This is a really big one. Many students don't know that by definition, 1 unit of classes is a 3-hour time commitment per week. So maybe you want to make sure you study at least 2 or 3 hours per week for each unit of class you're taking. And these are some examples for monthly goals. Maybe you're connecting with a mentor or a professional in your field or taking a training class. All right, so let's give everybody a few minutes to fill in some of your goals for part 3. And this will probably be one of the more time-consuming parts. But I would argue this is also one of the most important parts of the 5-year plan. If you can set some of these goals for things you will do every day, every week, and so on, these small incremental goals and small progress a little bit every day is really key in order to help you achieve that bigger goal. So definitely spend some time thinking about these goals. And if you have any questions on how you could break that bigger goal down into smaller daily or weekly tasks, please do feel free to shout out or type in the chat, and we can discuss it together. All right, are there any specific questions from those in the group? You're welcome to type in the chat or shout out if you'd like. All right, so everybody, please take 2-3 minutes. Go ahead and start filling out some of your goals in your plan. And whichever ones you don't complete, please do remember to go back and finish them later to help you achieve those goals. All right, how's everyone doing? Anybody have a question they want to share about part 3? Right, I see thumbs up. Let's go ahead, give everyone 1 more minute to finish up whatever part of part 3 you're working on. And then we will finish with a few final thoughts and recommendations to keep in mind with your 5-year plan. All right, so with that, let's go ahead and continue on to the last part of the presentation. So, the last thing I'd like to end with is some additional things to consider as you work on your goals. Setting goals is hard, and when you're a new student and you're just starting out, it can be kind of overwhelming. And often, a lot of us fall into the tendency of being overambitious or overloading ourselves. So, I'd like to share some additional ideas to keep in mind as you work on your goals. So, please do follow along on your presentation slides. Here are 10 other things you should think about as you work on your 5-year plan. So, first one, plan your classes carefully. So, this is something that many students are not aware of. And I myself, when I was a student, I was not aware of this. But by definition, one unit of college classes requires approximately 3 hours of work per week. And so this is a thing that we very commonly see as instructors is often we have students in our classes who are very talented, very capable. But if you're taking a full course load and working full time, it's going to be really hard to spend enough time in your classes to be successful. And so a common mistake students make is putting too much on their plate. And so one thing to caution you is to make sure you keep your plans realistic. It's great to try to finish your degree as soon as you can, but you don't want to take, 25 units in one semester and overload yourself and end up failing your classes. So you want to make sure that you do your best to take a manageable amount of classes and also make sure that that will fit in with the rest of your schedule. Also important is establishing a routine and scheduling recovery and fun time. Don't just plan the boring stuff. Take time to also spend with people you care about and to recover your willpower so that you can continue to be successful and efficient. Questions on this? All right, let's move on to the next one. Next one, be patient and flexible. I don't know about y'all, but I am terrible at being patient. It's tough to be patient when you know there's a lot you want to accomplish. And when you write down all these goals, it sounds so nice if you could just accomplish all of them right now. But you want to make sure that as you write your goals, that you're patient and recognize that progress can take time. And sometimes unexpected things pop up and your plans change. So you got to make sure you give yourself time. And remember, it's better to proceed slowly than to rush, overload yourself, and burn out. Another thing to keep in mind is to give yourself permission to experiment and make adjustments. Maybe you thought you wanted to be an engineering major and decide that you're not a big fan of engineering, you want to do something else. That's okay. You may not have everything figured out yet, but the idea is that you want to do your best to make a plan and try to figure out what you do want to do. And remember, even trying and failing, that could also lead you to new opportunities. So please be careful not to beat yourself up if things don't go according to plan or if your plans need to change. It's better to choose smaller, achievable goals than to overload yourself with too many ambitious goals. That brings us to our last point. Consider prioritizing your goals. I tend to be a little bit overambitious, and sometimes I find that some of my goals need to wait until later. And so if you find that you have too much on your plate, even when you're planning as carefully as you can, think about what goals you would be willing to give up on in order to achieve the others. You can't necessarily achieve all your goals at once, but you may be able to achieve most of them. So prioritizing can be really helpful. Questions on this? Okay, next one. This one is huge. And I don't know about you all, but being a student, it is really hard to fit in enough time to study and fit in everything else. But as much as possible, remember to take care of yourself and your personal goals. Life is not always about school. You only live once, relationships that you want to maintain, and it's very important to also have fun and recovery goals too. So make sure that you plan personal time and recovery time. There's more to life than work and school. And believe it or not, everyone needs time to recharge and recover. Nobody is able to work 110% of the time, all the time, without burning out. So make sure you give yourself some recharge time to avoid burning out. The last thing you want to do is work yourself to death and burn out and be miserable. Make sure you take care of yourself. And definitely don't forget those personal and health goals in addition to the education and career goals. Questions on this? Okay, next one. This is a good one. Finding your ideal job is a process. So, a lot of us, we think, okay, once I graduate, I want to land that dream job, whatever it is. But probably the dream job that you really want, you might not be able to get it right away. If you do, great. But you want to be prepared where maybe you need to take an intermediate stepping stone before you reach that final destination. And keep in mind that your ideal job may change. When I started out, I thought it would be really cool to work in pharmaceutical manufacturing. I worked in manufacturing and realized that the jobs are very intense, there's poor work life balance, and it's a very demanding job. So later I moved into design and ultimately education. So your ideal job, keep in mind that it may change depending on your situation, but it's probably at the intersection of what you're good at, what you can be paid for, what people need, and what you love. So if you're not sure what your ideal job is yet, you might find it helpful to see where these circles overlap. Okay, next one. Your major is not permanent. Just because you majored in one thing, that doesn't stop you from learning and doing well in another. And you can even look at me as an example. I started out as a chemical engineer, but I did all sorts of stuff. So sometimes I couldn't get that dream job that I wanted, but I took a different role so that I could get experience and gain transferable skills. So definitely just because you majored in one thing, don't let that stop you from learning and trying other stuff. Questions on this? All right, next one. This is a big one. I did not spend enough time thinking about this. Think about the type of work which suits you best. So I recommend that at some point you go through these questions and figure out what types of jobs would you be happiest and most successful in. For me personally, I'm a bit of an introvert, and I like to have some quiet time where I can plan and work independently. For me, being in a stressful manufacturing job where I was constantly on my feet and being bombarded with sudden emergency issues, I was not comfortable in that environment, and I found it really stressful. But other people love the fast paced environment and they love the constant action. So, think about what type of work suits you best. You may not be able to get everything you want in your very first job, but it's something you could work towards. Especially big now is work life balance. Post pandemic, people are definitely focusing a lot more on that. And many people like to be able to work from home. So, if you want to be able to work from home, keep in mind that you might need to develop certain skills and expertise that are suitable for work from home jobs. So certain jobs like hardware and manufacturing generally are not as suitable for work from home because you typically need to be physically present at a factory or in a lab. So, something to keep in mind. Questions on that? All right, next one. Get related experience. Especially if you're not sure about what you want to do, or if you want to develop skills that are relevant to your goals. Remember that school is not the only way to get experience. You can also get experience by joining clubs and extracurricular groups, volunteering, or even trying stuff on your own. It's pretty amazing what you can learn by searching YouTube and online for training courses and videos. So, certainly DVC can offer many courses of interest, but don't be afraid to look elsewhere as well. And DVC does have a lot of great clubs and organizations you can get involved with. Next one, networking. Again, this one's a big one. Definitely take advantage of opportunities to get to know your professors, classmates, people in industry, maybe people at clubs like Mesa and others. People you know can connect you to opportunities. And so this can be another great way to connect and get support and mentoring while achieving your goals. Next one, look at where the industry is headed. This one's especially relevant for STEM majors, but I think it's relevant to everyone as well. And there's an organization called National Academy of Engineering, and they've defined these grand challenges. These are things that National Academy of Engineering thinks are really big problems that society needs to solve. And you can see a lot of these are really important, like solar energy, engineering better medicines. Even if you're not an engineering major, you can see that these are big problems where we need talented people. So if you see where the industry is heading and how your goals fit in with these big problems, you can make a big impact. Finally, our last goal, or our last item here. Many students don't know that graduate degrees can be a really good option. And this is specific to engineering and STEM. So for humanities and other fields, graduate degrees may be a little different. But note that if you get a graduate degree, you're qualified for a higher level job. And typically, if you have a bachelor's degree or associate's degree, you may be able to get into more senior roles, but it takes a lot more years of experience. One other thing to remember is that more senior jobs generally demand more working hours. If you're a principal engineer or CEO, you're going to need to work longer and harder than a new college hire with a bachelor's degree, generally. So if you want the big fancy job and the fancy job title, that's great, but be aware that you may have to work longer and harder hours for that. Everybody has that optimal amount of work-life balance that they're most comfortable with, so best thing to do is figure out what work-life balance do you need for you. Also, for those interested in graduate school, be aware that you typically do need to pay for master's degrees, but for those who might be interested in the PhD route, be aware that PhDs in STEM are completely paid for. So my PhD was fully paid for by grants and external sources, and they even paid me a salary to do research and teach during the course of my PhD. So just letting everyone know that that's an option that might be of interest. All right, so with that, we're almost out of time, so let's go ahead and wrap up our workshop here. I hope everybody found that making a 5-year plan is incredibly helpful for planning and achieving your goals. And definitely make sure you write SMART goals to make them more effective and improve your chances of success. Also, don't forget to do those personal and health goals as well. You got to make sure you take care of yourself and your mental health. And if you'd like additional resources to help you get started, definitely consider setting up a meeting with a counselor or a DVC academic advisor. There's also great career services group at DVC. So definitely take advantage of the resources here on campus in case some of them might be helpful. If you have any further questions about these slides, you're also welcome to send me an email, and I'll do my best to point you in the right direction. Lastly, I did include some references on where I got the information for these slides. So if you'd like to learn more, you're welcome to also check out the references at the end of this presentation. That's it for today, everyone. So thank you so much for attending our workshop. There may be a survey sent out by our facilitator in the next few days. Unfortunately, she was out sick, so please do watch out for that. There may be some survey that gets sent to you. But for now, that is it. So thank you so much for attending. If there's any questions, I'll stay on the call for just a few more minutes. And I hope you all found this helpful, and best of luck to you as you prepare your 5-year plan.